So thank you again for being here this evening. Talking about generosity this evening. And I just read from The Way of the Bodhisattva, Shantideva's book. Some verses that express very high levels of generosity and how we might engage ourselves in the world for the benefit of others. Even our practice of bringing forth the awakened mind is for the benefit of others. I apologize that I'm not set up to move through what I need to do easily. I was getting ready to use a new computer that suddenly went blank, so I'm once again kind of scrambling a bit technologically. So I'll talk tonight mainly from Thich Nhat Hanh's book, once again, The Heart of the Buddha's Teaching, and you may have already read this. I hope you have. And as I said in the letter I sent out, we're looking at the 6 paramitas in a way, but 4 of the 6 paramitas are actually specifically parts of the Eightfold Path. So we'll concentrate mainly on the other 2. And the 6 paramitas are dana, which is giving or offering or generosity. Shila, if you want to use I believe it's Sanskrit. We've talked about that one. Those are the precepts, the mindfulness trainings, ethical living, and so on. The Kshanti paramita, Kshanti, which is usually translated as patience. And I usually say, but I like Thich Nhat Hanh's word acceptance better. And then I read this again. It's been a little while since I looked at it, and he doesn't use that word at all. He uses the word inclusiveness. The capacity to receive, to bear, and transform the pain inflicted on us by our enemies and also by those who love us. I'm still kind of fond of acceptance in all those circumstances. The 4th paramita is virya paramita, diligence, energy, perseverance, which we've talked about in a number of ways recently. And there's jhana paramita, which Thich Nhat Hanh calls meditation, and we've referred to it as concentration. And then there's prajna paramita, wisdom, insight, understanding. And we've touched on that with the right view, right intention aspects of the Eightfold Path. As we're using words, hard to get around it, the concept of non-self, the concept of impermanence, and trying to move beyond the concepts in those regards in our meditations. And Shantideva's chapter on wisdom, I think I mentioned last time, is notoriously thick and difficult to interpret. And I think I said the Dalai Lama has actually written a book on that chapter. And then Doug pointed out the book also was really pretty thick, pretty difficult to really easily get a hold of. And it might be because we're looking at the idea of prajna and trying to capture it in some way with concepts, because if we're using words, that's where we are. And there can be no success there. So we will be concentrating first tonight on dana paramita, the generosity aspect, and later on the kshanti paramita of, whether you call it inclusiveness or acceptance or patience. It very often has to do with anger and how we dance with our anger in various ways. So dana, generosity. When people talk about dana and generosity, they usually talk about the idea of giving with no expectation or desire for getting anything back. And when we talk about it in terms of material things, very often money, it's kind of like that parable that Jesus spoke of the wealthy man who came to the temple and ostentatiously told everybody he was giving a huge sum of money, which for him wasn't really all that big a deal. And then quietly and with no fanfare, a poor person came in and gave their last piece of money. And that is dana. The first was the quid pro quo. The rich man wanted something for his money. He wanted to be admired. So when we're giving material things or otherwise, the issue of our motivation is really paramount, and sometimes mixed. I think we may have talked about that before. Is there any desire to be noticed? Is there any desire for praise at all as a part of what's the act of giving? Is there any thought of racking up points of some kind? You know, we talk about gaining merit in various ways, and being generous is a way of gaining merit. But there's the famous interchange between Padmasambhava and the king in Tibet, who had built all kinds of shrines and stupas and monasteries, and he said to Padmasambhava, how much merit have I accrued doing all this? And Padmasambhava, kind of a Buddha figure for the Tibetans, said, none at all. Again, it's very similar to the Jesus story. And the question comes up sometimes that the teachings are given as dana very often. That's the way historically it's been. The monks always gave freely of the teachings. They came with alms bowls, but it was not, I'm not going to teach you if you don't give me some food. And in fact, they were not allowed, other than holding out that bowl, to ask for anything at all. And that's continued in the monasteries right on down. So when they teach, the monastics, this is, at least in most traditions, there's no request for recompense. But then you get into, well, how do you run a monastery or even run a course that you might be listening to without funds? And so there's very often a desire to give. And that is a real, it can be arise quite strongly, the desire, let me at least do what I can this way. It's actually written about as kind of the dilemma of dana in Buddhist teaching, because there are certainly teachers that are out there that are really there to make a living or even to become wealthy with what they do with the Dharma, which is contrary to this particular paramita. So that's the sort of material side. I wanted to just mention that, and then talk about Thich Nhat Hanh once again, his takes on this, because they're lovely. And he says this. He says the first practicing the 6 paramitas helps us to reach the other shore, the shore of freedom, harmony, and good relationships. The first practice of crossing over is the perfection of giving, or dana paramita. To give means, first of all, to offer joy, happiness, and love. Then he tells a story about a plant that grows in Asia, and every time you cut it down, it grows back in less than 24 hours, thicker and more vigorous than before. And he continues and says, when we give, the other person might become happy, but it is certain that we become happy. It reminds me a bit of the question that arises when we're doing Tonglen, the accepting of the suffering of other beings, or ourselves, but other beings in this example, and the giving whatever we have, all of ourselves, to help to transform that suffering. Does it really do anything? It's kind of like the question about prayer. If I pray for somebody, is there any actual thing happening of an interaction between us? And Thich Nhat Hanh's answer here applies. When we do that kind of a thing, whether or not the other person actually receives something is an issue that's difficult and debatable. On the other hand, our heart opens, and that has an effect on everyone that we're around. And there are certainly a number of Buddhist teachers who really believe at a certain level that there is a communication, as is true in other traditions as well. So then he goes on. He says, the greatest gift we can offer anyone is our true presence. And he tells the story of a young boy who has a very rich father who's asking him, what do you want for your birthday? And his answer is, Daddy, I want you. That presence was so important. And Thich Nhat Hanh has something he calls a mantra. And the mantra is, darling, I am here for you. And when he talks about couples, to be together and to say those words, to say, darling, he always starts darling, I am here and I know that you are here. And I know that won't always be true. And I am so happy that we are here now together, truly present to each other. My mind is saying, boy, is that different than putting some money in the collection plate. What else can we give, he says, and he answers himself, our stability. And then he quotes one of his poems. Breathing in, I see myself as a mountain. Breathing out, I feel solid. And he talks about the value of having that sense of presence and solidity and consistency, the effect it has on others. The person we love, he says, needs us to be solid and stable. How do you do that? Practicing. This is Thich Nhat Hanh. Breathe in and out. Practice mindful walking, mindful sitting, enjoying living deeply in every moment. What else can we offer, he says? Our freedom. What does he mean? Happiness is not possible unless we are free from afflictions or hindrances, if you want to think of it that way. Craving, anger, jealousy, despair, fear, wrong perceptions, all of that. When we talked about states of absorption, it was the same thing. You can't move into that type of bliss or rapture, as it's often described, unless you're free of those things, at least for the moment. He puts out a caveat there. Freedom is one of the characteristics of nirvana, he says, and then goes on. Some kinds of happiness actually destroy our body, our mind, and our relationships. Freedom from craving is an important practice. Look deeply into the nature of what you think will bring you happiness and see whether it is, in fact, causing those you love to suffer. You have to know this if you want to be truly free. Are there things I'm doing that I perhaps don't see are making demands on others, causing difficulties for others, resulting in any senses of resentments and so on? You know, a lot of unspoken expectations come into play here. One person expects this to be done, it is done, but there's a resentment, it's never spoken. So he talks about spending some time really reflecting on what we do to bring ourselves happiness, be it misguided or otherwise, that might have an effect on the people around us. An example of that might be, gee, I really like to play a musical instrument. It really brings me happiness. I enjoy it very much. It's a good, wholesome thing to do. And it drives my wife nuts. That's not true, by the way, but it could be. And sometimes we can be unaware of those types of situations. And what else can we give? He says, our freshness. Breathing in, I see myself as a flower. Breathing out, I feel fresh. There's another verse of that same little poem or song that I started with the mountain part. This is the flower part. You can breathe in and out 3 times and restore your flowerness right away. What a gift. So he's suggesting that we perhaps, my words, become stale, perhaps, as we move through the day with our judging, critical mind going, even noticing, yeah, I'm doing that, and, you know, using the practice as best we can. But we can get caught up and perhaps a little stale. And he's suggesting, take those breaths. Just take those 3 breaths. Freshen up. relax, let go. That is a gift. What else can we offer? He asks. Peace. It is wonderful to sit near someone who is peaceful. We benefit from her peace. Breathing in, I see myself as still water. Breathing out, I reflect things as they are. Another verse in the poem. We can offer those we love our peace and lucidity. I don't remember exactly how this is best told, but if one person on the sinking boat can keep their peacefulness, their lucidity, their calmness, their equanimity, can change the whole situation for everyone. What else can we offer? He asks and answers himself. Space. The person we love needs space in order to be happy. And this is a lovely little metaphor. In a flower arrangement, each flower needs space around it in order to radiate its true beauty. Have you ever seen a crunched up, jammed together flower arrangement? Sometimes you see them. People just push it all together and loses some of the real beauty of the individual flowers, as opposed to something that is done in a ikebana kind of way, where each aspect, each leaf, each flower is celebrated. A person is like a flower. Without space within and around her, she cannot be happy. We cannot buy these gifts at the market. We have to produce them through our practice. And the more we offer, the more we have. When the person we love is happy, happiness comes right back to us right away. We give to her, but we are giving to ourselves at the same time. And he describes also a giving practice with someone you're angry with. He says, if you've tried everything and you still feel angry, practice dana paramita, practice generosity. Send them a gift. And he says, when you feel angry, you won't want to go out and buy the gift. So take the opportunity now to go get the gift that you might use later on when you're angry. Take some forethought there. When all else fails, go and mail that gift to her. And amazingly, you'll feel better right away. The same is true for nations, he says. For Israel to have peace and security, the Israelis have to find ways to ensure peace and security. For the Palestinians, and for the Palestinians to have peace and security, they also have to find ways to ensure peace and security for the Israelis. You get what you offer. Instead of trying to punish the other person, offer him exactly what he needs. The practice of giving can bring you to the shore of well-being very quickly. What else can we offer? He has quite a number of thoughts on this, doesn't he? And he answers himself, understanding. Understanding is the flower of practice. He says in other places, true love cannot be there without understanding. Focus your concentrated attention on one object, look deeply into it, and you'll have insight and understanding. When you offer others your understanding, they will stop suffering right away. And it can be as simple as listening carefully and repeating back, is this what you mean? And just that can make a huge difference. The feeling of being seen, the feeling of being understood can be a profoundly healing experience. So he finishes his little section here. The first petal of the flower of the paramitas is dana paramita, the practice of giving. What you give is what you receive, more quickly than signals sent by satellite. Whether you give your presence, your stability, your freshness, your solidity, your freedom, or your understanding, your gift can work a miracle. Dana paramita is the practice of love. So I will stop there. And there we all are. And floor is open. Anne, I think, was bowing in.
Yes. I wanted to say how much I appreciated hearing all of those different ways to give. You know, I always think of it in terms of money, financial, but it's so much broader and so much richer to hear all of those different ways. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Thich Nhat Hanh. Yes, he
Yes.
is a poet. He is a poet. He says it well. Gil Fronsdal makes a point that I didn't mention, and I didn't talk much about Gil here tonight, but one of the ones he mentions is, you know, sometimes it's an act of generosity to accept someone else's generosity, which is a good one. You know, I don't need your help. Well, you know, it's being offered. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm having friends over for dinner, and in the past, when someone has said, is there anything I can bring? I don't suggest anything. I say, no, it's okay. But I think people really appreciate being able to bring something, you know, even something little.
It's a gift to them, isn't it? Just to say, yeah, yes, absolutely. Great example. Great, simple, everyday example. On to you, Doug.
It's interesting in Judaism, giving and charitable giving is tzedakah, which is translated as justice.
Ah.
And it very much feels done in that way, like paying your taxes. And it wasn't until I started practicing with this that I would pause. I think I read this somewhere or got the advice from it. I'd pause and actually take some time to think about it, to think about how this was helping and what it would do, and feel what it's like to be generous, as opposed to have it be like paying, have it be generosity and not just justice. It certainly feels better the Buddhist way. I could say that. You know, maybe I was just missing it. You know, the other way, it was the same thing. It was exactly the same thing. But my attitude towards it changed when I paused that way. Now, it's interesting in Judaism, the highest form is when it's completely anonymous, when you don't know the person who's receiving it and they don't know you. And it's just completely, that is where there can be no opportunity for gain.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I think those ethics are the same. I've just always been a little fascinated by those terms. I guess words do matter.
Yeah, charity is one of the 5 pillars of Islam. And I wonder if, I've never read much about it, but I wonder if you dig into that concept, if they're not talking about the same thing too, that they're really talking about generosity. I know in practice, it usually is a monetary kind of thing, and it's kind of like a duty. The justice thing, like you're describing, comes to mind, but I wonder about that. And of course, all the great traditions really stress the Dana Paramita one way or the other. Did I cut you off, Doug?
Yeah. Thanks, Kevin.
Okay. If I did, that wasn't very generous. To use Thich Nhat Hanh's examples of Dana and to make a commitment to say to the next week, I'm going to practice each of those types of Dana so that there is an awareness and an intention. Because I think opportunities arise that I don't see sometimes because I'm not thinking about it as an active practice. A moment where I could be present, a moment where I could be stable for some moment where I might not feel peaceful, but to take those 3 breaths, become fresh and relax into peacefulness for the benefit of those that might really need that right then. So the paramitas are practices, not just concepts. And one of the things we could do is over the next week, practice that one. Think about some of the different ways Thich Nhat Hanh talked about doing that, and put them into our lives in some way or another. And I love Anne's example because it is, everybody knows exactly what she means because it happens all the time with everybody. And there's lots of little things like that are, opportunities arising all the time. They just can go flying by and not really be noticed or not thinking about it. At least it is for me. Finally to Cheryl.
I don't know if this is, I practice generosity all the time. I help somebody remove a porch this week, and I just got back from helping a friend pack. I have no problem with that. I love to give my time and attention, and I receive back. But it's that flip side again, accepting others' generosity or really asking for help. But even accepting generosity is just such a challenge for me. I guess it's just something I struggle with. But to be able to work with a friend on something that would be work by themselves has just brought so much joy, and to see the benefit of that. So I do love the practice of generosity, and I feel privileged to have the time and the capabilities, to help. Yeah. But I think, Anne, thank you again. Letting others serve us sometimes is a gift of generosity. I'm going to reflect on that. So thank you.
You know, what you're talking about, Cheryl, I think also reflects, there's a tendency, I think, in our culture to, what's the right words I'm looking for? Fix other people, see the suffering around us, move to be helpful with it, which is a lovely thing. To see the suffering in our family and in our neighbors and our community and the world, and do what we can do. And you know, the practice that can be associated with that is the practice of taking and sending, the exchange of self and other, Tonglen. But a lot of people seem to have difficulty with that first step of being able to really accept loving kindness for themselves. I'm fine, thank you very much. I'm okay. I don't need that. You know, it's kind of like that. And it's a way I think that we keep our own suffering out of our awareness to some degree. That something arises in us. I've had some, you know, I'm speaking for myself here. I've seen this happen in me a good number of times, that I want to kind of blow past. It ain't nothing, you know, it's not a big deal. When in fact, beneath, you scratch a little bit there, and there's, you know, there's pain there. There's and sometimes long-standing, deeply embedded, that I really don't want to look at, because you know, sometimes it's pretty messy. Easier just to, you know, zip on past. And to be generous with ourselves, I think, but a different way, to be willing to look at these things as they arise and not just push past them, is being generous to ourselves. It's an act of generosity directed that way. You know, whenever we practice metta, it's always begin with yourself. The instruction on Tonglen is begin with yourself. And I think it very often is kind of given lip service. You'll notice that each meditation we're doing recently, I've always brought up this benefactor aspect, from whom you can receive care, receive love, receive wishes for well-being and success, and all of that. And you know, the reason I've been doing that is this, that so often it is something that is not easy. That's why I sometimes say, be aware of any reluctance or resistance that might be there. Now, you know, I'm fine, thank you very much response in that way. There's so many other people who are suffering so much more than I am, right?
Right.
That's the line that goes along with that. That sounds, you know, so justifiable. There's a reason not to pay attention to our own suffering, because it's so small compared to the suffering in the world. And there's certainly an element of truth in that. You know, we're not, the group right here, we're not starving, we're not dodging bullets. None of us at the moment, as far as I'm aware, have some, you know, terrible, painful, life-threatening illness. And we all have our aches and pains and our sicknesses, but so yeah, other people are definitely suffering perhaps more than we are, but that is completely irrelevant to being able to and willing to be present to that arises in us that is painful for us.
That certainly resonates, Ken, and ties a nice big bow on something for me, because one of the other groups I'm in, we're working with shadow self. And I think there's something there for me to scratch a little deeper on the surface of that, because I hadn't recognized that. That might be something. But I do give myself credit, because it used to be that Well, I grew up Catholic, so I like to blame the Catholics for the damn martyrdom. That's what it is. I was taught martyrdom first. I'm kidding, of course, but
Well, you perhaps only partly.
maybe perhaps only partly, but I do at least recognize and sit in how good it feels to help others, how the giving I let myself receive with them, and that's new. But I am going to work on that. That's interesting. And it's definitely right on with the shadow work. I'm going to look at that.
As wonderful as that kind of giving is, it can be what is sometimes referred to as a spiritual bypass for our own suffering.
You're right. Right. Yes. Yeah. Thank you.
This is Amy Bellingham.
Bowing to you, Amy.
I have worked on the practice of loving kindness towards myself and being able to receive from others. I came from a family where there was a fear that if you took from others or accepted from others, that you'd owe them.
Uh-huh.
And that you really couldn't trust if people gave to you the reasons behind them giving to you. That there was probably something that they, wanted from you by doing that, or that somehow it was going to come back against you, that you took it. There was a lot of messages around that. And through therapy, through becoming a therapist, through all kinds of processes over the years, I worked at unpeeling some of those messages and surrounded myself with people who were trustworthy and caring and who were great examples for me of being able to both show love and show generosity and also be able to ask for what they needed. And that kind of experience in relationships of seeing others be healthy like that and vulnerable. It was a vulnerability piece that was for a long time really hard for me to own. Has been a real exciting part of my growth over many years. I came from a family where there always used to be a fight over who was going to pay for a meal if you went out. And people would actually, when they first got to the restaurant, get there early and go to the waiter and say, make sure the bill comes to me. I mean, it's like, there was just this craziness. And I took on that craziness. I go out with my husband, with other couples, and I say, Michael, don't let them pay for you. It's like, he'd be all stressed out all the whole meal. It's like, what's going to happen when the bill comes? Is Amy going to get crazy? It's like, no, Amy doesn't get crazy anymore. We're okay with figuring all this out. It's like, but really, I mean, these things were so internalized, and life
and
is
even unrecognized.
so life is more peaceful as a result of being able to let go of the fears around receiving and giving. And there's a lot more joy when people do want to give me in whatever ways they do. And there's always been, the joy of being able to give to others. So, it's been a lot of work over many years, but I see the benefits in so many of these ways. The other thing I was going to share is that I know I've said before that I practice with somebody every day, that I write my intentions for the day. And most of the time, the intentions are about looking at my day and seeing where can I be present and where can I really make an effort to be mindful of listening more deeply and things like that.
Yeah.
And that practice is it's just really a beautiful practice for me, because it does make every day much more intentional, in those ways, and deliberate, and there's a lot from going around with my eyes open,
Yeah.
versus just kind of going through the day. I can be so unmindful. I can be so distracted. I can just so easily, and then at the end of the day, it's like, where did this day go? What did I even do?
Yeah.
And so being able to have this daily intentional practice and do my best with it, some days horrible, some days better, but at least have it in mind. That's it's a good thing for me, that aspirational stuff around Buddhism. So with that, I practice. I bow out.
Thank you, Amy. Yeah. We've talked about having an intention at the beginning of the day a number of times here, and also kind of reviewing that at the end of the day. And I think Amy's describing what, the idea that we do that all together this week with this specific Dana Paramita, which has so many facets, and being mindful. It's funny that Thich Nhat Hanh didn't put that one in there specifically. Being mindful in a general way is a gift to everybody around you, including yourself, of course. So yeah, I felt the little tug to say something on the order of, well, are there people that sometimes give things in order to influence people or take advantage? Absolutely, there are. And, I think fairly often, a lot of them are fairly transparent. You kind of see them coming. And every now and then, maybe something comes around where you wished you hadn't done that. You hadn't taken that little present, but however the gift was expressed. So I don't know where my mind is going with all of that, other than not to end up in the place you and your family did, where your radar was on so high that you couldn't accept anything from anybody for fear that it would come around like that. Yeah. Well, I know I'm preaching to the choir, so.
Ken, would you mind that last line from Thich Nhat Hanh, where it listed all of the different, presents, all of the different ways? Would you mind sending an email with that out, so that if we choose to try daily to work with that, we have all the different, like the freshness? I thought that was cool. I love that. Could you?
Yeah, I'd
just
be
that
happy to do that. Yeah.
Thank you. I'd appreciate that. Thank you.
And again, that's out of the heart of the Buddha's teaching. Thich Nhat Hanh's kind of, it's a book by Thich Nhat Hanh. Keep away from Bible words. It's a good one to have on the shelf. But I will definitely do that, and I will get that typed out and send it out. Exactly when, I'm not sure. My computers I'm having technological excitement at my house. Better make a note of that. Each time at the end of the evening, when we say, any benefit that might arise from our practice here, that's Dana Paramita too. And we can think about all the ways that happens. I mean, the practice we shared here this evening has had an effect on each of us that might well reverberate in various ways into our interactions with others. And in that way, those beings are benefiting from what we've been doing this evening. And those reverberations continue out as well. So when we say may the benefit be present for all beings, it's not as far-fetched as it sounds. And with that, may any benefit that might arise from our practice here together this evening be shared with all beings in all times, in all places, without exception. May it bring healing and transformation. May it bring peace in ourselves and peace in the world. Thank you for being here. Hope to see you next week.
Thank you, Ken. Thanks, everybody. Bye.
See ya. Bye.